Who's your favourite Scottish author? Me, I'm a big fan of the great Sir Walter Scott, but then I like the modern writers as well. Irvine Welsh, J.K. Rowling, not Scots, but a writer from Scotland, Sandy McCall-Smith, Ian Banks, Ian Rankin, etc., etc. But you know, the Writers' Museum in Edinburgh has only got room for 3. The great Sir Walter, Robert Burns, he would have to be in anyone's list, and also RLS, Robert Louis Stevenson. But UNESCO has recognised Edinburgh as the first world city of literature, so the SNP believe that Scotland, frankly, needs a much larger institution. Let's go into the hall for that debate with David Porter. David.
Brian, thank you very much, and you're right, there's no shortage of very good Scottish writers, are there? The debate on the Writers' Museum in Edinburgh is just started. Speaking at the rostrum is Paul Scott.
Called Scotland's Books, The Penguin History of Scottish Literature, which I recommend to anyone who wants to get some idea of the extent and importance of Scottish literature. And what he says, Scotland has played an improbably large part in world literature. And I'm sure that's true. So this is a very vital a thing we need. It's a great gap in our national institutions. It's something we need. And you know, that Scottish literature is the record of our past experiences, our past thoughts, our past aspirations, our past reactions to living in Scotland. It in fact is the main expression of the Scottish cultural identity. And that's not incidental or just as a little side issue. It is actually fundamental. It's the basic reason behind our objective. The fact that Scotland is recognised by everyone as a nation is because we have this cultural distinction, because we are recognised as having a different approach to the world from most people, our own particular individual approach, which makes us a nation. It's because of that that we have a right and a need for independence. So it's a very vital and important subject. And could I just finish by quoting another passage to you? One of the people that I consulted about this was the current president of Scottish Pen, the organisation of Scottish writers, Jenny Calder. And she, by the way, apart from being a distinguished writer herself, also spent many years organising exhibitions in the Museum of Scotland, the National Museum, the Royal Museum in Chamber Street in Edinburgh. So she knows about exhibitions as well as writing. And she said this in her letter, which she sent to Linda Fabiani, I believe. I believe that a museum of Scottish literature would have the potential to inform and inspire and to heighten awareness of Scottish writers' achievement in people of all ages and all nationalities. It could become the hub of Edinburgh City of Literature activities, a magnet to visitors, and an educational resource of enormous value. So I ask you to support this resolution.
Paul Scott from Edinburgh opening the debate on having a writers' museum. Essentially what it is calling for, the gist of this whole motion is to expand the Writers' Museum in Edinburgh and to get the Scottish Government and the National Library involved to look at the viability of a proposal of expanding the Writers' Museum.
Seconder, can that happen formally from the floor? Do I see a formal seconder, please? Yes, I do. Thank you. Linda.
The next speaker is the MSP Linda Fabiani.
I have to pick my glasses up. This resolution promotes a very, very worthy cause, and it's a cause that cannot be denied by anyone, because the wealth of literature that has emanated from our nation is absolutely immense, and it's a world-class standard. From Blind Harry to Lindsay Hogg, through the Scots, McDermotts, MacLeans, and right through to today, to the Kennedys, the Brookmyres, the Greys, and of course the Robertsons that Paul mentioned. And it's a fantastically proud legacy which should indeed be celebrated. But I've come up here to propose the remit back. And that's not just about the cost and the commitment of a national collection, the fact that I've had bids in for a national photographic library, a national film library, as well as a national literary museum. It's not just about that. I'm proposing this for very different reasons, and I want to lay these out to you. First of all, there's already a Writers' Museum run by Edinburgh City Council in Edinburgh, UNESCO's City of Literature. And whilst I do understand that there are difficulties with the building fabric, it's not for me, or indeed anyone else, to decide today that this resource should just be taken away from the ownership and management of Edinburgh City Council. There's also ongoing a campaign for the development of a Scottish Writers' Centre in Glasgow, in the Merchant City. Again, I don't believe we should be preempting the committed work of those who voluntarily give up their time for a cause in which they believe passionately. And lastly, I don't believe that we should necessarily commit to one solution without examining all the options and ways of working. A museum. What really does that mean nowadays? Is it a building in one location? Is it a resource that can be developed as a learning facility as well as a celebration of our culture? Is it a bit of both? The resolution says that the National Library should take it over. I have spoken with the National Library about this, and they've made various comments. But what they have said and what they are doing, and I have seen proof of, is that they're developing a vision for the next stage of the National Library's development, including an opportunity to commemorate and celebrate Scottish writers and their writing. And what they're saying is that rather than a traditional museum or display, they want to build upon experience with the world-beating John Murray Archive that I had the great privilege of opening there earlier this year. And it incorporates multimedia presentation. It's a brand new concept of how we can reach out and celebrate our great literary tradition and also allow an educational facility from it. I really want the library to achieve its potential. I want to be talking to them about it. I want these discussions to continue with no preconceived ideas or commitments. Our authors, poets and playwrights are renowned for their ideas, their imagination and their vision. I want our government to be renowned for these same things. I want our national collections and our local collections to be precious resources. I want to make sure that this government gets it right. So please, conference, remit back for full discussion. And one thing I will say, something that's wonderful about being part of an SNP government coming to this conference is what remit back now means. It's not remit back and forget all about it because we can't do anything. It's remit back and then let's move forward with the ideas that members of this party have. That's what I want to do. Please support the remit back. Thank you.
Well, Scott, are you wishing to use your right to sum up, or are you waiving that right? You will, okay.
Well, Paul Scott, who originally moved this part of the discussion, is now going to come back to argue his point further again after Linda Fabiani suggested that they consider this further.
The Writers' Museum, as I said, is very, very small, and in fact, it was the officials concerned with it who suggested to me that what was needed was a national institution far beyond the scope of a municipality. I think that is right. Also, this thing needn't be a burden on public funds. There must be many ways of raising the money for this. The lottery fund, if anything's left over from the Olympic Games in London, might be one source. And also, there are plenty of wealthy people in Scotland who I think would be very happy to contribute to this. But I agree with Linda, who is sympathetic to this idea. I think she appreciates its virtues, but she wants to have time to think about it before it goes into any detail, to study the whole implication of the whole thing. So on that understanding, I agree with the remit back.
So essentially what Paul Scott has said is that although he supports this motion, they will have more consideration of it. But as Anglish Robertson is now explaining, because it is a motion that they have to formally consider it. That's why we're seeing a vote in the hall now. Well, while these proceedings are continuing and they're working out exactly what we're going to do, let's cross to Brian.